Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of The Terror Talks. We are here on episode 22 today, and we have a major update regarding Halloween Horror Nights 30 happening at Universal Studios Orlando, Hollywood, Singapore, and Japan. But today we are only going to be talking about Universal Studios Orlando because they dropped the mother of all announcements. That's right, on Thursday, August 12th. They released a commercial that featured all of the Scarezones, all 5 houses, or all the remaining 5 houses, and the 2 shows that will be featured at this event. We have not seen anything like this before, hitting us just like out of nowhere. Like, it came completely out of left field, and it definitely caught everyone by surprise. But we are excited, to say the least. And we are so grateful that we finally got our announcements. We know what's coming. And we are just so ready to get down there for this event. This is going to be a great one. I can feel it. But today's episode, we are just going to be talking about the 5 additional houses that were announced. We will talk about the 5 Scarezones and the 2 shows on the next episode. So this episode and our next episode, episode 23, will be all about HHN30 and all the announcements that we received on August 12th. But without further ado, let's just dive right in and get on with the show. Universal Studios Orlando had previously announced 5 houses for their Halloween Horror Nights 30 event. These houses were Beetlejuice, The Haunting of Hill House, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Bride of Frankenstein Lives, and HHN Icons Captured, Halloween Horror Nights Icons Captured. We waited for, in our minds as fans, what seemed like weeks before we got any more announcements. We wondered how were we going to get announcements because the event was so close. The event starts on September 3rd in Orlando, and we only had 5 houses, no Scarezones, no shows announced. And usually at this point, we had heard from various sources that Universal typically had everything laid out already for us, and we knew exactly what we were going to be getting before even now. So we were very excited when Orlando decided, you know what, let's just drop them with everything, and they did not disappoint. I remember waking up this morning, very early actually. It's the first time I got up early in a long time, and I went and looked on Twitter because I knew it was Thursday. That's the typical Halloween Horror Nights announcement day. And there it was, a commercial, and I watched the commercial, and I had to watch it a couple times to make sure I was seeing what I thought I was seeing, because it was very cinematic. It mentioned 10 houses, several of them being original houses, and when they flashed the images of the houses across the screen, I was expecting to see the ones we already knew about, so The Haunting of Hill House, Beetlejuice, Texas Chainsaw, Bride of Frankenstein, and Halloween Horror Nights Icons. But no, I saw the images for 5 new houses that had yet to be announced. And I was like, are you serious right now? I did not even know what to think at that point. And then the commercial got even better because it showed the 5 Scarezones that we were rumored to get with their names and all that fun stuff. And when I saw that, I was like, okay, so what else is there? The last thing they had to announce were the shows, and those were the last 2 things they announced as well. So after just all this anticipation, and really, I guess you could call it anxiety amongst Halloween Horror Nights fans, we finally got the announcement that we had been waiting for. We have our full event schedule now. We know everything that we are going to get. The speculation map was correct, and it's going to be awesome. We are so excited. So, the big announcement announced the remaining 5 houses, and they were Welcome to Scarey, Horror in the Heartland, Case Files Unearthed, The Legendary Truth, The Wicked Growth, Realm of the Pumpkin, Puppet Theater, Captive Audience, and finally, returning from the HHN Lite event that we experienced in 2020, Revenge of the Tooth Fairy. All 5 of these are original houses, and they are probably our most anticipated ones. I know for a fact that Puppet Theater is one I've been waiting for a long time, since they actually kind of announced it last year without realizing they had announced it, I guess. Well, they knew what they were doing. But what they did was they showed a kind of behind the scenes thing to get people pumped up for 2021. And they said that Puppet Theater would be coming to the 2021 event. And so we're not really sure why they decided to wait so long to announce it when we pretty much knew from the get-go we were getting this one. Not sure why Universal chose to do it that way, but I'm not complaining because we are still getting it. So let's dive into each of these houses and talk a little bit about them. So first up on the list, welcome to Scarey, Horror in the Heartland. The town placed a sign at the entrance to Cary, Ohio, saying it's a nice place to live. Unfortunately, nobody lives here very long. No one escapes from Cary, where bad things just happen, and new terrors rain down year after year. If it claws, bites, feasts on blood, or just likes to rip people to shreds, it somehow finds its way to Cary. Experience an endless parade of unimaginable terrors, from horrifying creatures to bloodthirsty maniacs. You can scream all you want in Cary, but everybody's too busy doing their own screaming to pay much notice. So, from my understanding of this house, that Welcome to Scarey, Horror in the Heartland, this is a play on several scare zones and haunts that have appeared at various moments throughout Halloween Horror Nights history. So in a way, this is kind of an anniversary house because it's incorporating the various elements of all the other renditions of Cary, Ohio throughout the tenure of Halloween Horror Nights. Now, a lot of people don't realize Cary, Ohio is a real place. It is actually the home of one of the creators, designers of Halloween Horror Nights, and so that's why they started using Cary, Ohio as a location, and it just happens to be perfect to call it Scarey. So that's really awesome. This house, we don't really know much about it personally because we've never really been to the event before. We've never seen anything about this house, but we've heard a lot of great things. We understand that it's bringing back this folklore of Cary, Ohio, and its appearances at various other Halloween Horror Nights events, so we're very excited about that. We've seen a couple things. One of the things I read somewhere is that this haunted house will feature the Hive. Apparently that was a big part of one of the other Halloween Horror Nights, and nobody imagined it would come back, and apparently I guess it's coming back this time. So it's going to be a part of this. It seems like a very interesting house. I'm very, very curious about this one. The facade out front is actually really, really neat. We could see some construction of the facade from the regular park. If you're walking right by Men in Black, you can see it, because this house is actually happening in the Men in Black extended queue. It's the Men in Black tent house is what a lot of people call it, and it's happening back there. And you could see the facade. It literally looks like one of those big welcome to town signs, and it says welcome to Cary, and it's got the S at the front of Cary, like written in red blood or whatever, so it says welcome to Scarey. And it looks really, really cool. It's very much like a 1950s kind of town, neighborhood, if you will. So we're definitely excited about this one. I won't say it is one of our top houses that we're anticipating. I guess it's probably somewhere in the middle. Somewhere in the middle is where I would put this one. But it's definitely going to be a neat house. It's definitely going to be neat to see the kind of folklore, if you will, of Halloween Horror Nights and see how they incorporate these ideas from years past. Maybe we'll do a episode where we kind of just look at all the instances and where Cary has appeared in the event. So we'll look at all the places where Cary, Ohio appeared here. So that is Welcome to Scarey, Horror in the Heartland. Up next is Case Files Unearthed, The Legendary Truth. Follow the trail of a private eye as an investigation into the supernatural leads you into a dark world of ghouls and terrifying creatures. So this is another one of those houses we don't really know much about, but it definitely seems to be one that a lot of people anticipated and are very, very excited for as well. So this also dives back into that folklore, if you will, of Halloween Horror Nights. So The Legendary Truth is a paranormal investigation group, and they're actually the ones who discovered Fear, I believe. If I'm wrong on that, feel free to comment below and let me know, but I'm just trying to remember in my head what I've read and heard before. But they're the ones who kind of discovered Fear and, brought us into that realm of Halloween Horror Nights. And so this is a group that has been part of Halloween Horror Nights folklore for a long time. A lot of people are very, very excited about seeing this come back. I really don't know what type of haunt we will experience with this. Like, this will be a very interesting one as well, because, you know, like I said, they're paranormal investigators. So are we going to see like ghosts and such, or are we going to see some, because it mentions terrifying creatures as well, so are we going to see some like really creepy stuff going on in this house? You know, I don't really know, but I am very, very curious about what we're going to get with this one, and I'm very excited as well. This one is going to be in the Shrek house. So if you're there in the park, you enter the park and you go to the right, like you're going towards the Hollywood area of the park, this will be in the back second theater of Shrek. So they use that for a haunted house every year. Back in HHN29, it was the Killer Clowns from Outer Space Maze. So that is Case Files Unearthed, the legendary truth. Up next we have The Wicked Growth, Realm of the Pumpkin. An evil rot has taken root in the land. It's time once again for the rise of the Pumpkin Lord, who grows Halloween like a malignant vine. His minions are scouring the countryside, collecting unwilling sacrifices in order to summon the Pumpkin Lord. The closer to Halloween, the more people practice the traditions, the greater the powers of the Pumpkin Lord grow. As the pumpkins grow even bigger, your fear grows ever greater, and your odds of escape grow smaller. From the cemetery to the forest, there's no breaking free from the tenacious vines of the merciless Pumpkin Lord. So this is an interesting one that I'm very excited about. It's definitely, this is going to be one of my top ones, I think, because I always think there's something just kind of sinister about bringing that familiar tradition of pumpkins and jack-o'-lanterns. You know, we associate pumpkins and all that with Halloween so heavily that I'm really excited to find a house that is basically going to turn it into a scary thing. And I've seen it done several times in several different ways. Usually it's just a little scare zone. I've never seen a whole house based off of something like this, but it definitely gets me excited, and I'm very, very curious what we're going to see. I personally am ready to see the scenic design of this one, because I think in terms of scenery, this can be an absolutely beautiful house. I think that the creators can really let their minds wander on this one, you know, have a lot of vinery, if you will, roots, maybe go into some forests or trees or whatnot, some fields. I don't know. You know, there's definitely some interesting things. Obviously, it says, you know, from the cemetery to the forest, so I'm sure at some point we'll go through a cemetery, and at another part we'll go through the forest, and it mentions the vines, so I'm sure we'll be going through vines as well, and all sorts of great things with this house. I'm definitely excited about this one. One of the things I'm quite curious about, and this might be really interesting if they were able to do something like this, and it could just be the way that they wrote the bio, but I love this line about how the closer they get to Halloween, the more people practice these traditions and the greater the powers grow. So I'm wondering if maybe as we get closer and closer to Halloween at the event, will we get more actors in there? Will they like try throwing more actors in there to make it even more crazy in this haunt? The closer we get to Halloween, is that a possibility? I don't really know. You know, I'm not sure how that whole thing works with hiring your actors and all that, but that would be a really neat touch if they could do something like that. I would be really curious to see if they even considered something like that. That would be really neat, and I think that would just make this haunt for me. If they could do something like that, like, hands down, let's do it. I'm all there for it. Up next we have Puppet Theater, Captive Audience. Open Scene. A creepy abandoned old theater from early 1900s San Francisco. A puppeteer and a ballet troupe have been trapped here ever since, and they'd kill for an audience. Whether you're a puppet or a patron, that's your cue to scream. All the blood will drain from your face as you see the green room run red with blood. Your horror grows as you come upon grotesque living marionettes made from severed limbs. If you manage to escape their gory puppetry, then you'll become a part of the skeletal audience rotting in place. So this is another one that I'm very excited about. In fact, this might be number one on my list. If I put these in any type of order, this is definitely sitting up there towards the top, and I think this might be number one for me, just because I love the concept. I love, I love what we've already seen in terms of little sneak preview that we were given not too long ago. I think this one can shape up to be a really, really neat house. So just thinking about scenery and such, obviously you're going through a theater, and what's interesting about this is one of the tent houses out back. And so the fact that they are doing a house that would require probably a lot of scenic design on it, like, that's pretty impressive, and I'm very excited to just see what they're going to be able to do with this. Like I said, we saw a video last October that sort of announced it, but didn't necessarily announce it. Basically, all they said was, we are definitely going to get this at this event. And that just made everybody go crazy. Like, they were so excited at the possibility of seeing this house at this event, and when we got that announcement, we definitely were just even more excited. It's definitely one that I'm looking forward to, and I'm real curious to see how they can do it, just because I love the original house concepts. Those are always some of the best houses. The IP ones are good, don't get me wrong. Everyone loves a good IP house because they're familiar to us. They're some of our favorite shows, movies, all that fun stuff. But there's something more sinister about what you can do with an original concept. You can make things so much more dark. You can go in 1,000 different directions. You're not limited by what the owners of any particular brand will let you do. That's the great thing about these original houses. And so because of that, I think this is going to make for just a beautiful house, for one thing. I think scenic-wise, they're going to do some great things in there. And I am very, very curious, though, as to what we are going to see in the house. Like, are we going to see just a bunch of puppets? Are we going to see dead people? I'm curious because, it mentions the patrons that are dead, and it mentions the puppets, it mentions grotesque living marionettes made from severed limbs. It opens a lot of doors and windows and questions, and I think this could be a very, very big hit for Universal. I anticipate that this will be one that a lot of people are going to flock to. I think this year, in terms of original houses, this is going to be one of the big ones. I think Universal has truthfully outdone themselves in terms of original concepts this year, and this is going to be an original event, to say the least, because, we only have, 3 or 4 IP houses. Technically, I only say 3 IPs, and that's Beetlejuice, The Haunting of Hill House, and Texas Chainsaw. I really don't even consider The Bride of Frankenstein Lives as an IP, because if I'm not mistaken, it doesn't necessarily follow the story of the film. So in my opinion, I don't necessarily consider that one an IP. I think that's more of a creative twist on an IP. And from what I'm gathering, that's actually what Texas Chainsaw is going to be too. It's a creative twist on that IP as well. So it's going to be very curious, but I think this year Universal has definitely taken their foot off the IP gas and put it on the creative gas in terms of making their own stuff. And we are in for a fabulous, fabulous event. Alright, well, we're going to take a short little break to hear from our sponsor. When we come back, we'll talk about Revenge of the Tooth Fairy, as well as briefly talk about the other announcements. So, don't go anywhere. Hey there, Terror Talk fans. Are you looking for a new way to let your voice be heard? If so, check out our friends at Anchor. Anchor is a one-stop shop for creating your very own podcast. They offer editing tools to create your podcast, which include your audio, listener audio, unique transitions, and custom advertisements. In addition, they'll also help you distribute your podcast to other listener sources, such as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many others. With this unique app, you also have the chance to get paid for your podcast by simply placing ads for various sponsors in your videos. Best part of it all? It is 100% free. Anchor does all the work for you and makes podcasting as simple as turning on a light. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. That's ANCHOR.FM. Whether you're new to podcasting, doing it as a hobby, or hosting a professional show, Anchor is the place for you. back on the Terror Talks. Before the break, we talked about 4 of the 5 recent announcements from Universal Studios Orlando. Welcome to Scary Horror in the Heartland, Case Files Unearthed, The Legendary Truth, The Wicked Growth, Realm of the Pumpkin, and Puppet Theater, Captive Audience. All 4 of these are original IPs that we are receiving at the event this year for 2021, in addition to the 4 other houses we've already received, which are Beetlejuice, The Haunting of Hill House, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and The Bride of Frankenstein Lives. Now we're going to talk about the final house that was announced, and that is Revenge of the Tooth Fairy. This is a returning house from HHN Lite, is what we dubbed the event this past October back in 2020. When everything shut down, we didn't get the full Halloween Horror Nights event, but we did get what we dubbed the HHN Lite event, and this house was one of the featured ones at it. Revenge of the Tooth Fairy. You're about to discover the sinister reality behind the seemingly innocent childhood tradition. All children must give up their baby teeth to the goblin-esque tooth fairies or pay a gruesome price. It's an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. Step into an old manor house that has been swarmed by yellow-clawed fiends dripping with blood, teeth, and gore. Grit your teeth as you see the evil fairies extract their tooth bounty by force, while their victims struggle in vain. Hold in your screams or risk exposing your own teeth to their monstrous, grasping claws. Revenge of the Tooth Fairy. This is one that we got to experience for ourselves. It was actually the first haunt that we experienced at HHN Lite. This was our very first ever Halloween Horror Nights house, and when we went through it the first time, I was very impressed. I was impressed by the scenic value of everything. I was impressed with the creativity, but personally, this was not my favorite house. You know, we had this one and we had The Bride of Frankenstein Lives, and for me, my vote went more towards The Bride of Frankenstein Lives rather than this one. I was not as big a fan of this. Now, I do love the creative aspect of it, and I get what they're trying to do. They're turning the tail on its head of the Tooth Fairy, and it's neat and all. But for me, this one just did not do it. So, like it says, you have these goblin-esque creatures in there. There just wasn't anything really scary about them because it was just a mask. And, you know, I have to give a little bit of leeway on things because it was 2020 for one thing. And on top of that, you know, you had the plexiglass and you had everybody wearing masks and the social distancing. So I'm not penalizing for that, so don't mishear that. So maybe without the plexiglass it might be better. But for me, it was not as great of a house as I feel it could have been. There was not really a whole lot of variety in what was coming at you. Like, for instance, you saw the same type of creatures all throughout. And once you saw them once, I mean, there really wasn't anything scary about them. In my opinion, like I said, some people think differently. In fact, I've heard a lot of people say this was their favorite house. And so I thought that was kind of interesting. And I guess I'm the odd man out here who thought Bride of Frankenstein Lives was slightly better. Now, the scenic value of it all was very good. I can't even begin to lie about that. Like, it was amazing. I was very impressed at what we got in terms of scenery. I thought that they did a remarkable job with that because you felt like you were actually in a house, and like it really looked good. So scenery 100% top notch. In terms of scare factor, it wasn't the greatest. Wasn't the worst I've ever experienced, I will say that, because there were a couple jump scares in there that got me. But it wasn't, you know, as great as it could have been. I definitely think I jumped more in The Bride of Frankenstein Lives than I did in Revenge of the Tooth Fairy. And again, you know, I try to look past the whole plexiglass thing and the social distancing and all that. And truthfully, the social distancing was the great part about it because you weren't right on top of another group because they were, you know, staggering each group. So that actually helped some with, you know, resetting the scares and whatnot to make sure that each group got the scare. So that was an okay thing. But for me, it just didn't really do much for me. And the ending really, it wasn't much of an ending, honestly. I don't think, if I can recall it correctly in my mind, I don't recall any major scare happening at the very end of this house. I think I remember you literally just kind of walked out and that was it. So for me, I'm not super excited about seeing it come back. I knew it was going to come back like everybody else who knew it was coming back. But I'm not exactly jumping for joy about it. I can personally live without it. If they had just said, oh, we're only going to have 9 houses and this one was one that didn't come back, it wouldn't hurt my feelings. All that being said, I am willing to give it another shot now that, things will have changed a little bit by this event. The plexiglass should be gone and the lessened actors should be gone as well, so they should be fairly well staffed in the houses now. So there should be no shortage of scares, and that's what I'm hoping for. At the same time, obviously, I know Universal has to err on the side of caution, which is highly encouraged. Err on the side of caution, do what you have to do to keep everybody safe, and still give us an awesome event. So far, everything looks like it's going forth as it would on a regular Halloween Horror Nights here. It doesn't look like there are any major changes on the horizon. The only change I could foresee happening is the possibility of maybe the guests having to wear masks to go through the haunts. And I get that. I'm not opposed to it. Just try not to talk about these controversial matters. But I do know it's an important thing that we do want to understand about with this event. And it's definitely important when we try to figure out what we are going to get in terms of a full Halloween Horror Nights. I think we are probably going to get as close to full as you can without affecting anything negatively. I think the plexiglass is probably going to be gone. I believe that the masks may come back inside the houses. I don't know about outside. So far it's looking like outside is kind of a done deal and we won't be wearing them outside, but I wouldn't be completely shocked if they did come back inside, at least for the guests. I'm not really sure how the actors would do it, but Universal will figure all that out. I'm positive of that. I'm hoping the one thing, if we get nothing else, I do hope that we get to keep those staggered groups like we had last year, because that would make the experience just so much better. That being said, wasn't a big fan of the people dressed in all black with a little light wand standing in the middle. They would put it out in front of you and stop you. And so that would kind of break the illusion a little bit. But they're going to be in there anyways, because they're typically in there trying to tell people which way to go. Because you can get lost very easily in these houses, especially with how dark it is. I get lost in haunted houses all the time. I'll be like, hey, which way do I go? And, so these are actually a very useful thing to have. But, when they stick their wand out and they're like, hey, stop, then it's like breaking the fourth wall a little bit, if you will. Because if you think about it, these haunts are a performance. It's a theatrical performance. It's a play. So, you don't want to break the fourth wall in the production. But I get it. I understand why they were there. And, it helped with the pacing, for sure. But other than that, I really don't know what we're going to see in terms of COVID measures. Just keep an eye out on all the websites and such to see what it looks like we're going to get. I haven't seen anything even hinting at the fact that we are going to have any changes. And I feel like at this point, if this event wasn't going to go through as planned, they probably would have pulled the plug. I definitely don't think we would have gotten the announcement we got if there was any possibility of it not happening. So it looks like it's going to go forth. But, anything can happen. We are literally less than a month away at this point. In fact, we are 15 days away, I think. Let's see. Today's the 13th. Is when I'm recording right now on Friday the 13th, folks. How about that? I didn't even realize I was doing that. Today is Friday the 13th. So we are a little over 15 days away. I think we're about 20 days away from the event. So we've got some fun stuff to look forward to. It's definitely going to be fun. And just keep your fingers crossed that we get to go forth with everything as planned, because this event just looks too good. So if we lose it, I'm going to be absolutely gutted. This will be my first year attending the full event, and we're going to give you guys full coverage of everything that we possibly can. We'll be having an episode coming out real soon with our hype list and where we rank each of the houses, and we'll talk ever so briefly about them. Maybe we'll try and get a couple guests who are going to go through the house with us and kind of talk with them about that. So in addition to those 5 haunts, we did also receive the official names and concepts of the Scarezones. We're not going to talk really too much about the concepts, but we will give you guys the names of them. And we also received the names of the 2 shows. And again, we're not going to talk too much about those on this episode. That'll be on our next episode, episode 23. So the 5 Scarezones are Crypt TV, 30 Years, 30 Fears, Seek and Destroy, Gorewood Forest, and Lights Camera Haction, Eddie's Revenge. So those are those 5 Scarezones that we are going to be getting, all of which appear to be exactly what we thought they would be, and they look amazing. We're so excited. And then the 2 shows that we are receiving is the Marathon of Mayhem Carnage Factory. This is the Lagoon show. And then a new show called Halloween Nightmare Fuel. So this will be an interesting show, I definitely believe. I'm not going to tell you anything about it on this episode. It'll be on the next one. So we will cover all of that on episode 23. But all in all, this looks like a very promising event. I think this is going to be one that's going to go down in history. Not just because it's the 30th anniversary or anything like that, but because Universal has done a very good job with the way they've programmed it all, the way they have created things. So I think this is going to be an awesome event, one that everyone's going to be talking about for a while. It's definitely going to be one that's going to be tough to rival. And I really hope I'm right about that, because if I'm wrong, I'm really upset. But I'm very much looking forward to this year already. The houses, the Scarezones, the shows, everything about it just has me just super excited to get down there. We're going to be down there October 10th through the 18th. We're going to hopefully get through at least 3 nights of HHN. My brother is going to probably get to go at least 5 or 6 nights, actually, because he's going to be going to HHN all those nights, and I'm actually going to be traveling to Busch Gardens and SeaWorld for their Halloween Scream events, as well as a couple other local haunts as well. So we've got a big Halloween trip planned. That week is going to be absolutely crazy, and we're going to be getting so much coverage for you guys, and we're going to have so much to talk about when that time rolls around. So we are definitely looking forward to that. We can't wait to bring you guys along the journey with us. But that is going to do it for us today on episode 22 of the Terror Talks. We're talking about the final 5 house announcements for HHN30 Universal Orlando. Be sure to tune in on our next episode, episode 23, where we will discuss in a little bit more depth all of the Scarezones, as well as the 2 shows that have been announced for HHN30 Orlando. We are still keeping an eye out for HHN30 Hollywood to make sure we report on those announcements. So far we haven't gotten anything, but we are keeping a close eye on it. They still have, I believe, 2 or 3 attractions to announce for the Halloween haunts. I think that's correct. It could be 2 more, I think they have to announce. Either way, they have 2 more to announce, as well as their 4 Scarezones. So we are still kind of keeping an eye on that, waiting to see what we are going to get. But that's going to do it for us today on episode 22. If you liked this episode, be sure to rate, comment, and subscribe. Let us know what you liked, what you didn't like. You can contact us on any of our social medias or shoot us an email at theterrortalks@gmail.com. Be sure to go like us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Go follow our Patreon, where you can give us a little bit of extra love by subscribing to any one of our packages. We have a $1 package, $5 package, and $10 package. And you can read all about those on the website. Be sure to listen to all of our listener sites. We are on Spotify, Anchor, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. So you can hear us anywhere, and there's actually more than that. So go check us out on all those. Subscribe to them. Be sure to check out when we're going to get new episodes out. You can also go to our website. We are theterrortalks.wordpress.com. You can go on there. New episodes are always going up. You can subscribe to our mailing list, and we will email you whenever some great things are happening, or when we've got updates coming out, or episodes, all that fun stuff. Go check it out. We want you out there. If you're looking for some other content to go check out our friends over at the Unofficial Universal Orlando podcast, or UUOP for short. They're covering all things Universal Studios Orlando, but specifically just Universal Orlando in general. Then if you like them, you can go check out their sister podcast, the Rush of Fear podcast, which is covering Halloween Horror Nights. They are all Halloween Horror Nights, and I'm sure that we will be seeing an episode from them very, very soon. And then you can also go check out our friends over at the Theme Park Duo podcast. They are covering all things out on the West Coast. So they are covering HHN Hollywood, Knott's Berry Farm, and Knott's Scary Farm, and Disneyland, and Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween, and all that fun stuff over there on the West Coast. And they just cover theme park things in general. So we will see a lot of them doing things. They're fantastic. We love them. They're awesome. And then finally, go check out our friends over at Tales from the Creep. They're covering all things supernatural, spooky, creepy, extraterrestrial, interdimensional, all that fun stuff. Finally, we want to thank you for being a loyal listener and for joining us every time on these episodes. We cannot do the show without you, and you are just as much a part of this as we are. So thank you guys so much for joining us. Be sure to go out there, share us with your friends. We want to get more listeners. We are getting more and more listeners from different parts of the globe each and every day. I think I just saw today that we are actually down in Brazil. We are somewhere in Saudi Arabia. We are in several states across the U.S. We are in Canada. We are in Germany, just to name a few of where we are right now. We have a pretty widespread following right now, but we can always use more. We are waiting for more. We want to see more of you guys out there. But that is going to do it for us today on episode 22 of the Terror Talks. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and we hope you will tune in each and every day to see what we have to offer you guys. Until next time, take care of each other. Don't text and drive. And be excellent to each other. Take care, guys.